Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Today is September the 29th, 2017. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me just say, this Joseph Parker versus Hughie Fury fight is one of the better heavyweight title fights I've seen in my life. This was a great fight. Truly great fight. Both fighters, in my opinion, gave the other the toughest fight of their careers. Right? The styles here are interesting. Both guys, their competitive advantage against most fighters, their movement, right, was neutralized by the other fighter. Because, simply put, Hughie Fury has probably the best footwork in the heavyweight division. There's a footwork gap here. But he's fighting a guy, Joseph Parker, who might be the best athlete in the heavyweight division. So Parker is able to neutralize Fury's footwork advantage. It's not just foot speed, it's footwork, change of direction, right? Change of pace, turning. Parker's able to offset that to a large degree because he's a great athlete with incredible stamina, who is able to bring it for 3 minutes of every round. And he's aggressive. So the tragedy of this fight, and it is an absolute tragedy, is the scoring of the fight. The scoring of this fight is worse than the scoring of the Golovkin-Canelo fight. Because here you have two judges, not one, but two judges who seem to be scoring another event, right? The scorecards are absolutely preposterous. Make no mistake here. And let me just say, my own scorecard had so many tied rounds that I gave up scoring. The fight's that close. You know, at a certain point when you're scoring a fight, you realize, look, if they award this fight to either fighter, I'm prepared to live with it because I myself, looking at multiple rounds, couldn't pick a winner, right? Let me just say this, though. I am old school, right? By that I mean I don't believe the fighters enter the ring on equal footing, right? In a championship fight, in my opinion, you have to beat the champion to take his title. You have to fight in such a way where at the end of the fight we say, you did more than the champion. You deserve the title. Now, Joseph Parker enters the ring with the heavyweight belt. In a fight like this, where it's razor close, where you could sit down with people and someone says, I thought Fury won, because he's the one controlling a lot of the movement, right? He's the one forcing Joseph Parker, literally forcing him to miss, right? Parker's trying to be aggressive, but Fury has it timed to the point where as Parker approaches and starts to throw a punch, Fury moves just enough to have the punch miss. Fury has Parker hitting his arms. In other words, Parker's punches are landing where Fury wants them to. If someone came up to me and said, look, I thought Fury won this fight, I could not argue with them. But if someone else comes up to me and says, look, Joseph Parker entered the fight with the belt, right? He's the king wearing the ring at the start of the fight. He's aggressive. He has fury on his back foot. He's the one with the volume. He's throwing power shots. He has fury at times of rounds, right? Predominantly focused on defense. And I believe this is the reason why Parker is still wearing the belt. Fury doesn't hit Parker with enough meaningful punches. In other words, there's a title fight. Fury clearly has a style that troubles Joseph Parker, but he doesn't close the deal. In other words, he shows you that he belongs on the same stage with Joseph Parker. But there are not enough moments in this fight where Fury throws enough right hands. He certainly has the left jab working. He doesn't throw enough right hands. He doesn't throw enough combinations to put the period at the end of the sentence. In other words, you're watching the fight and you say, my God, Fury might take this champ's title. And then Fury doesn't hit the next level where he lands some big shots. You see the champ hold on for a bit. And you think to yourself, well, Fury is taking the title. Right? So, I don't have a problem with the outcome. Right? Joseph Parker winning the fight, I don't have a problem with that. He was the champ at the beginning of the fight. He doesn't get cut up. There aren't enough moments of Fury hitting him where he freezes. And you say to yourself, this is a big Fury round. Right? So I don't have a problem with the outcome. But I have a huge problem, with the scoring. I believe if Joseph Parker's crowd, if his inner circle is blunt about this fight, they would admit that this is an escape fight. By that I mean a fight where the champion escapes with his title. Right? Think Ali versus Kenny Norton at Yankee Stadium. Right? Think Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez in the second and third fights. This feels like that. I'm sure Joseph Parker's thinking to himself, this is the toughest fight I've had as a professional boxer. I'm sure Joseph Parker's corner, before the scorecards were read, were thinking to themselves, what could we have done better to make this fight more convincing? I'm sure as the scorecards were read, there was some doubt about who was on what side of the score, right? Let me just also talk about something that's serious here. It's my philosophy in just following fights that the time when you figure out the truth is in fights like this, right? I know Anthony Joshua's not involved in this fight. I know Deontay Wilder is not involved in this fight. They don't have to be. This fight showed us, in my opinion, right? And I'm not even trying to convince anybody here. I'm just telling you how I'm going to play the heavyweight division, right? Looking at Joseph Parker in this fight, looking at his stamina, looking at his movement, and understand, this is a fight between two of the better movement guys at heavyweight. Don't fall in love with a CompuBox sheet. By movement, what do we mean? We're talking about if no one lands a punch in the round, who would you give the round to? Who's the fighter who is stopping the other guy based on feints, based on timing and positioning? Who's the guy controlling where the fighters are? Right? The spacing, the pacing of the fight. Who's thwarting the other guy's A game in between the punches? Right? Who has the other guy's punches landing where they want them to? On an arm, on an elbow. Who's making the other guy miss? Now, I'm just telling you that we're in an era of big, clunky heavyweights who specialize in certain things, right? Deontay Wilder, it's that big right hand. Luis Ortiz, it's fighting inside, right? Understand that the heavyweight division right now is vulnerable to a guy who can move, a guy who can get from point A to point B faster than an opponent, a guy who can throw punches faster than an opponent, a guy who can go forward or backward, is more agile than an opponent. Because he escaped here, and that's what it was, folks, because Joseph Parker escaped the toughest fight of his professional career, with his unbeaten streak intact, with his belt intact around his waist. I'm just telling you that as far as I'm concerned, if the heavyweight division stays as it is, if Alexander Usyk doesn't come out of cruiserweight, or if Maris Briedis, another guy who moves extremely well, doesn't come out of cruiserweight. I know I'm sounding like a crackpot here, not the first time, but I'm just telling you that, in my opinion, I don't see the guy at heavyweight who can beat Joseph Parker. He's a superior athlete to Anthony Joshua, to Luis Ortiz, and to Deontay Wilder. Right? Parker's game is such that I know in this fight, he's on his front foot, right? He's throwing hooks. He's coming forward, right? That's because of his opponent. That's because he didn't have the luxury against Fury, a guy with a great jab, of fighting this fight on his back foot or of fighting this fight in a low volume way. Parker had to be aggressive. Now, because he's fighting Fury, people need to understand Fury's style negates a lot of what Parker's doing. If Parker fights this fight against Deontay Wilder, I believe he stops Wilder. Right? If Parker fights this fight against Kubrat Pulev, who also has a great jab, I believe he stops Pulev, because I don't believe Pulev has quite the advanced footwork of Hughie Fury. Right? In this big, clunky heavyweight division, I want people to start considering Joseph Parker to be this generation's Mike Tyson. He's a little bit different than Tyson. Dare I say, Tyson didn't have all the parts of his game that Joseph Parker does. Right? Tyson had to hurt you. He had to be aggressive and force you to either get hit or tie him up. Joseph Parker has much more of a back foot game than Mike Tyson. Right? Tyson also big-time signature puncher. I want people to realize that Joseph Parker, when he wants, can sit down on punches and can take you out. Now, just like Tyson shows up in the mid-'80s and just moves qualitatively better than the bigger, clunkier heavyweights around him, right? That's why they're all holding him, right? That's why Bone Crusher Smith is holding Mike Tyson, because Bone Crusher understood if he lets Tyson go, Tyson's going to move around the ring faster than Bone Crusher, and he's going to be throwing hellacious shots and you won't be able to stop him. I'm just telling you, we're in an era right now that's kind of like the mid-'80s. A lot of big clunky guys. I'm telling you that these guys don't have the hand speed. They don't have the movement. They don't have the athleticism. They don't have the stamina of Joseph Parker, right? Just be prepared to have your mind blown when the truth comes out, when Joseph Parker gets big fights against some of the guys right now at heavyweight who have bigger names, right? I personally would take Joseph Parker over Anthony Joshua in a second. We're in a climate here where Anthony Joshua is going to fight Kubrat Pulev. Deontay Wilder is going to fight Luis Ortiz. And Wilder and Joshua are talking about how they'd love to fight the winner of the other fight. And many of us here are saying, oh, that would certainly determine who's the best at heavyweight. No, it won't. Because we won't know who's the best at heavyweight until Joseph Parker gets a crack at those guys. Let me go one step further. Let me completely discredit myself here in this video. In terms of movement, there are other guys who you need to consider in the mix. Namely, the guy who beat James Toney. And that's Lucas Brown. Right? I'm just telling you, I know Lucas Brown's a big guy like the other guys. But Lucas Brown moves a lot better. Right? Moves a lot better than Deontay Wilder, than Anthony Joshua. Right? And I'm telling you, boxing's cyclical. Right? There are going to be times when you have smaller heavyweights like Marciano, Floyd Patterson. Then there are going to be times when you have bigger heavyweights like Joshua, like Deontay Wilder. And I'm just telling you, along comes a guy, and Parker's not that small, folks. I believe he's 6'4" himself, right? He's fighting Fury, who's even taller than that. That's how outsized the heavyweight division has become, right? But I'm just telling you, the fight you just saw was the toughest style matchup for both Fury and Joseph Parker. Right? I'm just telling you. It's the toughest for both of those guys. And if Parker's not fighting a guy with the footwork of a Fury, he's going to run through many of these guys. Let me say this too about Fury. What I want Fury to do, and I know Fury believes he won the fight, right? I know he does. And let me just say, you know, he might have. The fight's that close. But Fury needs to understand, too, that to become the champ, you need to beat the champ. If I'm Fury, I just work on increasing my volume just a bit. I work on being able to throw a few more right hands in a fight, right? Understand, Ali was a combination puncher. There are times in Ali fights where he lets both hands go, right? Where he throws what we used to call flurries, right? What Fury needs to realize is he has his other man beat on the footwork. He has the superior jab. He has the better sense of spacing in a bout. What he needs to do is to then incorporate in his game just a few bursts of flurry. Think Ray Leonard at the end of some of his rounds against Marvin Hagler. Right? Leonard understood whatever he did for most of the round, he needed those moments in the round where he lets his hands go, switch a highlight, so he reminds the crowd, I have the hand speed advantage. Right? So he looks like he's roughing up the other guy. What Fury has to do, he doesn't have to wait till the end of rounds, but he needs to give us a few moments during a round where he is doing a little bit more than just pivoting off his back foot and making the other guy miss while throwing a jab. Right? He needs to let a right hand go on occasion. He needs to mix it up a little bit. Let me say this too. Floyd Mayweather. One of the things I admired deeply about Floyd Mayweather was the fact that there were certain fights where Mayweather would just decide, I'm going to draw a line in the sand right here. In other words, I'm not going to move. I'm going to let the other guy walk into my shoulder. Right? As I like to remind people, he gets hit with two of the hardest punches he's hit with in his entire career by Shane Mosley. And Mayweather stays in the middle of the ring. His knees buckle on one of the shots. Mayweather stays in the middle of the ring, right? He's not backing away. He's not trying to run away and make the other guy chase him. No, Mayweather made sure during some parts of some fights, even when he's hurt, that he was going to stop moving. Right? That he was going to show that even when he stopped moving, he had the other guy figured out to the point where he could block the shots or he could smother the shots. Right? Fury is on his back foot a lot in this fight. I want Fury to consider the idea of occasionally not moving. In other words, even Ali, keep in mind, you could be up on the ropes and not move. Right? Ali, the whole rope-a-dope thing against Foreman, I thought that was jaw-dropping. By the way, Ali's winning some of those rounds. I want people to revisit that fight. I thought the whole point there was to kind of like let the crowd know, look, this isn't a fight of him pursuing me for 12 rounds. No, this is a fight with different acts, different stages. And I'm going to show you that even when I stop moving, when I have my back up against the ropes, Mayweather, Marcus Maidana, right? Mayweather, Ricky Hatton, quite frankly. When I have my back up on the ropes and this big, bad, publicly perceived heavy puncher guy is right in front of me, he can't hurt me. Right? I want Fury to look at those parts of the Mayweather Ali films. Right? Because here, Fury's moving on his back foot for 12 rounds. I believe it would have been devastating if Fury, and keep in mind, Parker's aggressively trying to come forward. He's aggressively trying to come forward. It would have been interesting if Fury would have confused Parker at least twice in the fight by stopping in the middle of the ring, having Parker run into him, and then landing some good counters, maybe even throwing a combination before moving away, just to remind the crowd, I'm the master in this fight, right? I can throw some right hands here. I don't have to move to win this fight, but I'm moving because it increases my chances. To sum up, I think both of these guys have vibrant careers. I believe the heavyweight division is vulnerable. I believe multiple champions have holes in their game and are at risk. I believe we're in a big man, flat-footed era that leaves the door open for guys with movement, with timing, with athleticism. Right? Joseph Parker just went to the United Kingdom and against the toughest opponent of his career escaped. That's what he did. Escaped with his heavyweight title. Right? I get the feeling that this fight might be the toughest fight Joseph Parker has for the next 2 years. This is as he continues to wage war on the heavyweight division with a belt around his waist, calling out Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Luis Ortiz, etc. Let me just say this too. I'm expecting a lot of turmoil at heavyweight. Right? I'm expecting Luis Ortiz to take the belt from Deontay Wilder. We'll talk about that in another video, but I'm expecting Ortiz to win that fight. Let me just say this. Kubrat Pulev is a much more liver underdog. He's a live underdog against Anthony Joshua, and Pulev doesn't have Fury's footwork. Right? So don't be surprised if there's some big upsets. But what I want the fans to do is to realize that whatever the upsets, and I'm sure there are going to be some rematches, I'm guessing that if Pulev upsets Joshua, both men are going to want a rematch because Joshua's box office gold. There's big money involved, right? He's like Canelo, right? What I want fans to do is to demand that Joseph Parker get a shot at the title, right? He already has a belt. I believe privately there are many people in boxing, people in Wilder's camp, people in Joshua's camp who have to know that Parker is a much bigger problem for their men than the public realizes. Let me just say this too. I understand Fury's people, understandably, have filed a protest here because the scoring of the Parker fight was absolutely preposterous. But what I want Fury to realize is that if he fights Anthony Joshua, lucrative fight, right? He would have a much easier time of it than he had against Joseph Parker. In other words, they're different roads to the heavyweight title, right? Fury has to realize that he moves better, quite frankly. Much better than Anthony Joshua does. Right? Food for thought. Anyway, to the boxing hardcore, let me just say, don't go by the reports about the Parker versus Fury fight. From a style perspective, this fight was a great fight. Right? I believe it's one of those escape fights that you'll remember for many years. Just like old timers remember Ali versus Norton at Yankee Stadium. Their arguments, passionate arguments, people make about who won that fight. Right? You know, Ali escapes with his title. That's the best word we could use. I believe the word escape is the best word we could use on how Joseph Parker survived this fight with his title. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I understand there are many points of view. You know, I've read articles here online where they're saying, oh, not much happened in this fight and stuff like that. Crazy. Let me just say too, the announcers on the feed that I watched believe that Fury had won the heavyweight title, right? That's how much of an escape fight it is. I'm not here with a crackpot point of view, although I might come across as a crackpot. I just want you to understand there's more going on in this fight than is noted on the CompuBox numbers. Let's just say, I'm sure Joseph Parker probably can't remember a fight where he missed as many punches as he did in this one. To the boxing press, when you're talking to Parker, please ask him, what's the toughest fight you've had in your career? Have you ever missed more punches in a match than you missed against Fury? I think we know the answers to those questions if Parker is honest. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Let me also say this too, and I'm not kidding when I say this. I once saw a fight between two Hall of Famers. It was a rematch. And one Hall of Famer drops the other one twice. Right? Drops him twice. So then they announced that the fight was a draw. I'm not kidding. And the commentator then interviewed Sugar Ray Leonard, who had just been dropped twice by Thomas the Hitman Hearns. This is a fight people need to remember. And they asked Leonard whether he thought he won the fight, and Leonard, of course, hemmed and hawed, tried to claim that the draw was the right call. Well, sooner or later, the truth comes out in life. And it's Ray Leonard who actually gives the speech that inducts Thomas Hearns into, I believe it's the Nevada State Boxing Hall of Fame years later. And in that speech, Ray Leonard openly said, this guy was the toughest matchup of my career, and he kicked my ass. Right? Kicked my ass in the rematch. He didn't say it at the time. I remember. I saw it live. I was in a bar. Right? There was a near riot in the bar I was in. This is back in the day of, closed circuit and stuff like that. Right? It took Ray Leonard years to say what was obvious to the people around him. I'm guessing after Joseph Parker goes on to bigger and better things and beat some of the bigger names in the heavyweight division, I'm guessing years from now, he's going to honestly talk about what happened in this fight. And when he does, he might surprise some people by talking about how tough it was. Right? He escaped with his title, folks. Don't believe the scorecards. Anyway, let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.